as you know, we are, as we committed to you, we would be continually updating you as we knew things and as decisions were made on whatever it was, we would continue to update you. Today, we'll be talking about, and the Secret Service will be leading that, around road closures and other things associated with that, and their perimeter and things like that. And so that's what this conference is about, okay? But before we turn it over to the Secret Service, Chief, did you have something you want to say? Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As the Mayor stated, we're going to release very shortly some of the security and traffic restrictions as it pertains to the RNC, and then hopefully people will get a better picture of how downtown will look during the RNC and how they can maneuver around things if they don't want to be involved in it, and if they want to get closer to the venue, how they can actually do that, both in a car and on foot. Right now, the Division of Police is definitely working closely with our partners, especially U.S. Secret Service, our state and local partners, to make sure that we've vetted everything. We're coming down to the 11th hour here, under 20 days, to make sure that everything's in place. And once you get a copy of this document, you'll be better able to see how things are going to flow downtown. The main traffic component, as far as traffic flow, ingress and egress, will be the responsibility of the Cleveland Division of Police and our local partners. Agent Roll will talk to you a little bit about the other parameters within the RNC security zone itself. But our main responsibility is for everything outside of that. I think we have a solid plan that melds together people that want to come in and enjoy the convention and people that want to come downtown, shop, go to restaurants and things like that, do business downtown. The goal of the plan that we put together is to make sure people can do both in a safe manner. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Agent Ron Rowe, and then he'll give you a little bit more on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. So pursuant to the National Special Security Event designation, the Secret Service is the lead federal agency in developing the security for the RNC. But we do not do this alone. We do it with our partners, especially our partners from the city of Cleveland. And while we are responsible for protecting our protectees, candidates, and nominees, we also have a very important mission to protect all who want to come to downtown Cleveland and participate and get the experience of being at a convention. That includes members of the media, delegates, alternate delegates, persons invited to come to the convention, but also anybody who wants to come and be a tourist and get the experience of downtown Cleveland during those days. In conjunction with the RNC, the Secret Service will be establishing zones around the Republican National Convention Complex. The Republican National Convention Complex includes Quicken Loans Arena, the Gateway East Plaza, Progressive Field, and as a result of that, we will be implementing restricted areas for both vehicles and pedestrians. And the press release will itemize exactly which roads and which streets will be closed during the convention. But in planning security measures for the RNC, the Secret Service considered a wide array of potential security threats. We did not take this decision lightly. We attempted to strike a balance between making sure that anybody who wanted to come to downtown would be safe and secure, but also we wanted to make sure that the commerce and the daily business of the city of Cleveland would also go on. One such prevention strategy is to ensure that there is an adequate standoff distance for any of our venues that we will be protecting. And that really is the decision factor in some of the closures that we had to implement. In an effort to allow pedestrians to approach the complex as closely and as safely as possible, we also restricted vehicles from going into certain areas, namely Prospect Avenue. Prospect Avenue between Ontario and East 9th will be restricted to vehicles. That will be a pedestrian-only thoroughfare. Portions of Huron from East 7th Street to Prospect Avenue will also be a pedestrian-only thoroughfare. What does that mean? That means if people want to come downtown, and if they want to go to a restaurant that's located on Huron or East 4th Street or anywhere along Prospect Avenue, they will be able to do so. They just will not be able to travel there by a car right down Prospect Avenue or down Huron. These street closures and traffic restrictions, they demonstrate that our primary objective is to make sure that we have a safe and secure environment. And we attempted to strike that balance. We wanted to make sure that the city of Cleveland was ready to welcome the world, but they did so in a safe way. And if you keep in mind that this is really kind of a puzzle, and every day that we've been planning this, every puzzle piece has been put into position. But as a result of that, there's always some kind of other collateral effect on other parts of the puzzle that we're trying to put together, that is our security plan. We feel now that we are 18 days out, we have that puzzle essentially assembled, and we're ready to move forward. So when we release this street closures, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. There will be a map that will accompany that, and that will be going out today.
And before we take questions, I would like to ask from us to you. Of course, we'll answer whatever questions you have, but this is about getting information out. One of the things that all of you have said to me and other people is that we'd like to know this so we can get the information out. So this is about getting the information out, not only just the story of it or questions you may have, but having the accurate message of what it is will be very helpful to us as people plan to make decisions as to which route they're going to take in or out of the city and things like that. Okay? So any questions you have?
So as far as full street closure, is Prospect the only one that's going pedestrian only? So East 9th is going to be pretty much open?
So East 9th will have traffic restrictions. East 9th from Prospect Avenue to Orange Avenue will be closed to vehicles.
So when people get off the highway, they'll be detoured around?
There will be some detours coming around to direct people. Portions of East 9th Street will be open going northbound to the Shoreway.
What about in and out, egress, whatever, around the convention center, the media center?
So the Huntington Convention Center is the media filing center. There will be some street closures on Lakeside Avenue between East Mall and West Mall. In addition to that, St. Clair Avenue will be eastbound only between Ontario and East 9th Street.
All right.
At what point will foot traffic be restricted to a layperson? You can't go past X point?
It depends where they're walking. So anywhere around the Republican National Convention complex, unless it's a restricted area where they have to have a credential or it's closed, they will be able to walk up to. But Huron is probably going to be, it's only going to be open from East 7th up to Prospect Avenue.
And that restricted perimeter is actually on this map?
It will be.
Now, how will this affect residents who live downtown? Is there any sort of security check area that they're going to need to go through? And will people need to be bused in any way to where they live?
So we stood up a Business and Community Impact Subcommittee back in October. We've been holding monthly meetings since October. We're now meeting weekly now at this point. As a result of those meetings, we identified residents and garages that we had to take into consideration for our security plan. As such, we stood up a vehicle screening area on Prospect Avenue just west of East 9th Street. That was to accommodate residents of 668 Euclid and any of those parkers who utilize the garages along the north portion of Prospect between the Residence Inn and 668. So we did look very, we relied on the members of the community to help us and guide us as we set up these restrictions to make sure that we weren't disrupting their lives, that they could get into their residences, and we made sure that we did it in a way that would be as minimally intrusive as possible.
So is this the only way that they'll get in? Will they have to show ID or some sort of, residency, requirement?
There'll be a check, a residential check, and that's where they'll enter into.
Will there be a certain place where they can park? Like if they're in that zone, they'll be able to park in their regular places?
They'll be able to park in that garage. They'll go through a vehicle screening. It'll take about 2 minutes. We're not completely searching the car. We're doing a check with a canine dog and a technician. We'll just do the engine compartment, do the trunk, and then they'll be on their way in less than 2 minutes, and then they're into their garage and they can park in their normal space.
And you mentioned checking their residency, but they can bring friends or family members.
Absolutely, and anybody in that car. And of course, people can also come and walk down the street too and go. We're not going to prevent anybody from going into their residence or where they live, or somebody who wants to pay a visit to a friend who lives anywhere along Prospect Avenue.
So those other parking garages on Prospect, will those just be shut down for the most part? Those business park, where the businesses park?
Which ones are you talking about?
For like the hotels and,
That's what we're making the accommodation for, is for those garages there. Just to the west of the residence inn, there's a garage, and then there's the garages that facilitate 668 and the business, the day parkers along Prospect Avenue.
Have you set the hard security perimeter around the building yet?
Yes, we have, and that will be in the map that will be released today.
Now, what about the businesses that are located in that area that may get deliveries or function in that sort of way? How will that work?
So we're going to set up a remote delivery site. We've been meeting with members of the business community who will be doing deliveries to Prospect Avenue and East 4th Street. We've set hours for that. Deliveries will go from 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. It does not have to be pre-scheduled. We've already put out procedures and guidance to those business owners, the folks that service restaurants or have to make deliveries to these businesses. They'll go to the remote delivery site, they'll be scanned, their cargo will be scanned, and then they'll be escorted by law enforcement into the area of Prospect Avenue. They can make their drop, service their customer, and then they can move on. In addition to that, if there's an emergency situation, if a restaurateur loses their refrigeration or some other kind of mishap, we will make accommodations to make sure that we get that service technician in so that they can service their customer and get that restaurant or business owner back up and running.
What will these areas look like visually? Tall fences, concrete barricades? How do you?
It'll be a combination of fencing and it'll be a combination of hard barriers as well.
I had a broader question about security. In the past couple months, we've seen some pretty nasty confrontations between white nationalist groups and counter-demonstrators in California. Some of them say they're going to be coming to Cleveland. What do you do to make sure that you don't have similar confrontations on the street outside the convention?
So in working with our partners, part of the National Special Security Event structure is that we have a subcommittee system. One of our subcommittees is crowd management. We have representatives from state and local agencies that are participating with us on this. We have a plan in place. We rely heavily on our city partners, but obviously we do not want groups that are in opposition to each other. We don't want a conflict. So we're going to work to make sure that we have plans in place that they're separated. However, on a street or something like that, there might be an opportunity where they might come together. But at that point, I feel confident that Chief Williams and his staff are ready for it. Let me just say one thing on that. A couple of months ago, we took a trip to Washington, D.C. With Chief Williams and his executive staff to view the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington, D.C. We actually viewed two protests going on at the same time. You had one group that was for a particular country, another group was in opposition to a particular country. The local police department had bike officers out and they created a gap right between the two groups. There was no altercation or anything like that. I will credit Chief Williams and say that he had the foresight to go out and they purchased 300 bicycles, and I know there's been a lot written about that. These bike officers are going to be worth their weight in gold during the week of the RNC. I think we already saw how useful they were during the Cavaliers celebration. Tim and I actually were out on the street and were watching the bike crews as they were out there. I think you'll be able to see them rapidly get to places and be able to create that barrier, and that was something that Chief Williams had it in his mind, Deputy Chief Tamba, and they have executed on that. And I think that's just one of the many ways in which we'll be able to keep partisans from getting into a conflict.
besides just directly around the queue, are there other parts of the city that are going to be restricted?
Anything around the Huntington Convention Center, and then we will have the welcome event on Sunday, July 17th, down at the lakefront between the Great Lakes Science Center and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That will also have traffic restrictions that will be in the release and on the map as well.
Not seeing the map, is the casino garage, is that included within that area that's restricted to vehicles? Will be able to park in that?
At this time, we're still formulating some agreements with the casino garage. We're sensitive that they have a business to run, and those conversations are proceeding.
So how much do you want this to be business as usual for those businesses downtown and people that work downtown? Is it going to be a huge hassle for them to come in and do their normal day-to-day that week?
We have taken great lengths to try and strike a balance between making sure that we are not completely disruptive to the city. But when you put this many people, we're going to have 50,000 people into the city at this time. There might be some minor inconveniences, but we're trying to make sure that we have a safe environment to make sure that nothing goes awry during that week. But we are sensitive to the fact that we want to make sure that folks can come in downtown. We encourage people to come downtown. They may have to alter their plans a little bit as far as their routes, or they may have to change their hours where they come in. But we would encourage them to take public transportation, find alternate routes, but they should be able to proceed and continue on with their daily routine.
And with these fences that you're going to have up, how many I don't know if the map shows, but are there certain checkpoints that people have to go through?
The ones that will be made available to accommodate residents, those will be designated and identified on the map, and then the guidance is also in the text of the press release as well. In addition to that, we will have a social media presence. We'll be tweeting out information, traffic alerts, and we'll be able to, in partnership with the city, we'll also be putting out advisories and making sure that residents can get to where they need to go.
But it doesn't sound like, unless somebody's going to those specific areas, that there'll be random checks happening in downtown.
There will not be.
These barriers, are they up the weekend before through the weekend after?
Yes, it'll be a very robust build-out that we're still working on the timetable for.
So, but they can expect perhaps Saturday before?
I can't commit to a date right now.
Are there specific closures you're going to have in the week before for the Rules Committee meeting?
That is not under the Secret Service, so I don't have information on that. I don't know if the city would have that information or not.
And again, those checkpoints will be done by the Secret Service. Cleveland Police will monitor student traffic outside of those areas.
We are relying on the city for their assistance with traffic control. The vehicle screening areas, though, are run by federal personnel.
Are there any, are there going to be any highway closures as a result of the RNC?
There will be some restrictions on highway, namely large trucks, vehicles that could carry something that could be harmful to us, and we're putting those out in the press release.
Can you talk a little bit specifically, because I know the DNC has said truckers need to reroute?
And we're taking the same approach. Class C vehicles will have to be rerouted. We're also looking at some lane restrictions on I-90 as they go past Progressive Field.
Is the Secret Service, is the Secret Service in charge of the airspace? Because I know the Coast Guard is taking care of, the waterways. Can you talk about that and any restrictions?
Sure. So we rely on our federal partners. The FAA regulates airspace. We're working with them. They just put out a notice to airmen that will govern the rules for flights coming in into Burke Lakefront as well as Cleveland Hopkins.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.